I think in my 20s and early 30s, it wasn't a joyful experience, it was a competitive experience. I had to fight for everything. So I was like a UFC cage fighter. I mean, every day was a workout. I was heading into the octagon. There's no guilt at all because that was the only way to get out. And I said, "Why did you hire me? I remember being in line. There was just guy after guy, and you hired me." And he said, "You know, that guy's got a line of bullshit a mile long." He goes, "But I can mold that kid."
I didn't know about the health scare that you had February 6th, 2022. Yeah. How did that change Colin Cowherd?
Made me so mad. Interesting always wins. It's not about being right. I'd like to be right, but nobody is. The audience wants projection and conjecture and predictions and theories and a belief system. Nobody's ever turned me off because I was wrong. They've turned me off when I'm boring.
All right, welcome to Sons and Daughters, everybody. We've got a great guest today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Remember, Sons and Daughters, we want you guys to subscribe. This podcast is all about ordinary people and how they become extraordinary in life. And today's guest is certainly an example of that. So I'll start by saying this. I've had the honor to work with and be around the best of the best, men and women who are at the top of their game, and they do what they do better than anyone. That's true about the athletes that I cover, the coaches I interview, and most certainly the writers and reporters that I call colleagues and that I call friends. So I've been able to learn from watching them do their crafts, and at times, I get to pick their brains and hear about their process. So you hear Nick Saban refer to the process all the time when it comes to his football teams, but every single successful person has a process that they stick to. Sometimes they modify it and move it around, but the process stays the same. It's what got them where they are and certainly what keeps them there. So for today's guest, Colin Cowherd, I've had two opportunities to really kind of hear about his process. One, when he came and spoke at a college football seminar that I was at ESPN. So this dude, he swoops in, he talks for about 20 minutes, basically laid out his entire process, how he prepares for the shows, how he prepares his hot takes. And as quick as he came in and was there, he was gone. And when I tell you the stuff that he said, the curtains that he pulled back, my head was spinning because I gained so much insight into this person that I was a huge fan of for many, many years, way before I knew him at ESPN. So the other time I was able to spend some time with him was, I think it was like 14 or 15. We spent several hours at a bar, having some drinks in LA, getting to know each other. And I got to know him personally at that time, and we've stayed in touch ever since. But I'm going to tell you a question that he asked me when we were at that bar back in 2015 that I literally think about daily, still to this day. So I told him, Colin, that I was doing these marathons and triathlons, and I was training for these crazy endurance events. And he asked me, "Are you running towards something or are you running away from something?" And I didn't realize at the time, but it was certainly the second. But that question really has always stuck with me. And again, I get the opportunity to be around these people who are the best at what they do and have the most thoughtful, creative minds. And so if you don't take those things and really kind of live with them, you're missing out. So on today's Sons and Daughters, we're going to find out how Colin Murray Cowherd, son to Charles and Patricia Cowherd, from Grayland, Washington, population 847, became one of the most recognizable and polarizing voices in American sports media. Host, of course, of The Herd with Colin Cowherd, founder of the podcast company The Volume, author, 5-time Nevada Sportscaster of the Year, Sports Illustrated 2005 Radio Personality of the Year, and of course, Radio Hall of Fame class. So much more than that as well. So welcome to Sons and Daughters, Colin.
I remember that. It was called Kraft. That was the restaurant. It was right across from Fox. Mm-hmm. And we sat down and we talked basically television and careers for about 2 hours. And I remember that very well. In fact, I remember asking you that. I remember asking you that question, and it was a little nosy, but I was wondering why you were doing that because you were so busy and you had kids and stuff. And I thought, boy, that's a daunting side workout plan. Mm-hmm. And it probably was a bit invasive at the time, but I remember genuinely wondering, Are you running to something or running away from something? Why the marathon plus triathlon plus? But you know what? Life is a book, and we have several chapters, and the fact that you kept thinking about it. People have said things to me in my life so many times, and they reverberate in my head for years. And so I'm the same way. It could be my agent, Nick Kahn, my friend, Jamie Horowitz, bosses I've had, my wife, Ann. Friends will say something. And I think I think the fact that I'm like this, I am so curious. I'm just fascinated about the journey. I used to be all about the destination. I think as I've aged, I'm more, and now that I have kids and stepkids, I think the journey to me is fascinating. I like being part of people's lives. At the Volume, I'm part of young people's lives. It's a young company, and it's just fun. And it's and once there's an old saying that I heard years ago. I thought it was so smart. Outline your line in pencil, not pen. Be willing to erase. And that's a really healthy way to live. I used to be black and white when I was in my 20s and 30s. I'm much more about the pencil. I'm much more about the pivot, learning, growing, and it's fun. I think as you age, when you make mistakes, sometimes it's kind of funny. Like you're like, oh my God, how did I do this? What am I holding on to? Where am I going on this stuff? But anyway, I made a short answer, a very long one, but I remember that lunch very well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way you learn. I tell my kids this all the time. It's like if you don't have a teacher that gives you a bad grade on a test, you don't know how to learn how to get a better grade. Well, go to her, talk to her, do these things. Like you have to figure things out when things go wrong. When things are always going right, then you just keep on going. Have you ever asked that question to anybody else? I was wondering. Like, is that like a standard question that you've asked people?
No, I don't think
No.
I've ever asked anybody else that question. I just saw this talented broadcaster and this mom and this wife, and you were doing endurance. My ex-wife did that endurance stuff, and I knew how rigorous and time-consuming it was. So when you said that, I thought, geez, you got a busy life. That's a lot. Why are you doing that?
I'm an overachiever. You said that you love the journey. That's why I love this podcast, because that's what this is about. This is about the journey. How did you get here? So I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me. Were you running from something or towards something when it came to what you wanted to be and what you wanted to do? If you look back at that young boy that was, raised in this small little town of Grayland, Washington, were you running from something or towards something, Colin?
I think it was a combination of both. I was the classic child of divorce, small town, go to college, highly ambitious. So my dad was ambitious and my son's ambitious, so some of it's genetic. But I think I was, I wanted to be something. I wanted to matter. Maybe it's because, my dad was a workaholic. My mom and dad got divorced. I didn't have a masculine male figure in my life. Maybe I was seeking to be that or to befriend that or to become that. That's all stuff I've gone through therapy with.
Yeah, who hasn't, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm a much more joyful person and a much more joyful broadcaster over the last 25 years. But I think it took me until I got, my late 30s to go to work and can't wait to get to work to laugh. But I think in my 20s and early 30s, it wasn't a joyful experience. It was a competitive experience. And I think I'm just realizing that early on. About mid-30s, you have kids, and I'm like, I don't love who I am. I don't love exactly how this thing's going. So I just kind of attacked me, and over the course of time, you just try to improve. I didn't have the white picket fence life, although I had a great life. I grew up in the same house. My mom was a doting mother, British, funny, witty. My dad was the town doctor, optometrist. I wasn't close with my sister. I am now, but I wasn't at the time because she was 5 years older. And what 15-year-old girl wants to hang out with her 10-year-old brother? I was more the jock. She was more the social animal. But small town, and I think so. I think it's a combination of both. And then I think as I've aged, and maybe it's guilt, but I do feel like early on I was kind of a selfish broadcaster and very selfish in terms of I was going to get there. There was almost a rage in my ambition. And then I think, and again, there's a lot of reasons why, but I think I've kind of pivoted to, I like being part of other people's journeys. I've done very well, financially, spiritually, happily married, great kids, everybody's healthy. I don't want to be on an island. Like I want to be part of other people's journeys. Like my wife and I started about a year ago, a little real estate company. It's so fun to watch her kick ass because she's so smart and so talented and so gifted and such a cool artist. It's just really cool to be part of somebody's journey and to watch her figure out stuff that I never could. She's very intuitive on certain things that I'm not. And my sister similarly. It's so great to be part of her life. We talk every week, we text every couple of days, and it's like, this is really cool. She ages, she stayed in my small town. And then I've got 6 kids, 2 are mine, 4 are Ann's, and to be part of their lives. So I think what I'm saying I've done is what a lot of people have done. You grow up, child of divorce, you're kind of selfish, you're kind of aspirational. There's some fear-based drive. And then, over time, you're just like, okay, yeah, I want to sleep better. I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better husband. And I think I've done what a lot of people have done.
Yeah, I think when you and I sat down and had those drinks, in LA many, many years ago, I do remember you and I connecting on some of the personal stuff. Also from a divorced family, my sister is a recovering addict, and so I know that you and I had some of those connections as well. I hear what you're saying, and I think that just kind of looking at my journey as well, like. Was I having fun when I was, first starting out? Yes, but it was also like you wanted to prove yourself. You wanted to get the best gigs. It wasn't fun. It was work. It was like, I'm working to do this. And then as you get older and you mature and you've lived these experiences and you're more comfortable in your own skin and you know your own worth, then you start to chill out. And that's when you want to help other people. But you can't get to where you are right now without being that person that Colin was when he first started.
There's no
drive,
Right. Like I don't feel guilty for that. No, I've said that before. Like I didn't have anything to fall back on.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't
neither,
make
buddy.
it, nobody else in the family was making any money, had any connections. Yep. I had to fight for everything. So I was like a UFC cage fighter. I mean, every day was a workout. I was heading into the octagon. So I don't feel guilty about it at all. But I am happy that I have grown and, it's manifested itself. That work ethic has continued, but it's helping others, not just myself. Yeah. But there's no guilt at all.
Yeah.
Because that was the only way to get out.
1,000%. So I want you to tell me about Grayland, Washington. Your mom and a young Colin. I read somewhere that your mom said you were 8 going on 40.
Yeah, she did.
So tell me about you as a young boy.
Well, it was really funny. I got along with teachers almost better than students. My mom used to always say that. She said, you were so serious and so driven. You knew what you wanted to be when you were 7, 8 years old. You wanted to be a sportscaster. And I did. I always knew it. I remember going to college. As a young kid, I was a jock. I had 2 or 3 really close friends. Jack Jones was my buddy, Rick Schroeder, and they were jocks too. But, even though I was divorced, I had not surrogate parents, but my good, strong high school football coach for years, high school basketball coach. I was very close to teachers. And I think a lot of it was my mom was very witty. I think my mom's friends were witty. I think my mom had a very Benny Hill British sense of humor. She's from Leicester, Oadby in England, central England. And it was a very kind of funny house. My mom was quick to laugh. And I just think I just kind of connected. I liked being around adults. I lived rurally, so I didn't have neighbors. My dad's friends would come over. He had a doctor friend, Bill Stute, who was a riot, like laugh out loud, funny guy.
And you got that humor as a young kid. You've got the adult humor.
Yeah, and I just always, as a young kid, I loved Johnny Carson when I was young. I would watch the Benny Hills and the Johnny Carsons. I just liked, I wasn't a silly kid. I was never into that stuff. And I don't know why that is, but even now, like, I remember my mom once complaining about my dad. Oh, he comes home and he all he talks about is work. And so I've always thought about that when I was with my ex-wife or Ann. It's like, oh God, I don't want to overwhelm them with this stuff. But my work is fun, and I've tried to include my wife in the work and create a company for us. And when I wrote, my book, she was very helpful. And when I started the volume, God, for a year, I just bounced everything off her, and she has great instinct, so I trusted her. So, I mean, I really respect her opinion on stuff. And I also think, one thing you learn, Ann and I have been playing real estate for years, is that when we can tell immediately when a house is solely built by men. It's just missing women. Women should be part of the process. You need a woman for the pantry. Women just see things differently in a house than men. Men just forget stuff, and it's all masculine. And, being around my wife, she'll mention stuff I just wouldn't see in a million years. And over the course of 20 years, just being around her and listening to her, I talk all day, right? 3 hours a day. So when I get home, I like to listen. I like to probe. I like to ask questions because I've been talking all day. So I find that with a lot of my friends. I'm a question asker. Like I want to hear about stuff. And almost to a point where if I'm not entertained, I get bored. Like I'm always looking for information and interesting kind of angles on stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is, though, right? I mean, listening to people, you get to hear all the different sides to it, and then form your own opinion based on all of these things that you hear. So you're gaining. It's like you're researching every single day by just talking to people.
If you're a talk show host, you are a professional observer. I mean, you can't just talk 3 hours a day and bring new material every day without being exposed to other people's thoughts, whether I'm reading somebody's book or watching somebody's documentary. So anyway, I think I was a pretty happy kid. I loved sports, but, I had the kind of things that, big ears, high school acne, being, rejected by girls like we all are in college, not being as good athletically as I wanted to eventually, turning to broadcasting, not getting a job I want, all the rejection letters of life that you need to be ambitious and driven.
You showed them, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you keep those little chip. My wife says this, I'll say things to her. One time I was writing a book, and I was writing a chapter about balance is overrated. I'm like, Kobe Bryant wasn't balanced. Peyton Manning's not balanced. The great comedians aren't balanced. Jerry Seinfeld says, I'm literally thinking all day about material. And my wife says, honey, you're balanced. You have a chip on both shoulders.
I love that. Yeah.
And so I think, that's all part of the process.
And that came from being the kid with, as you just said, big ears, the pimples, maybe a little quiet, people kind of...
Well, I was weird. I was a weird kid. I was a serious kid. I was about my career at 8. I wasn't playful.
So crazy.
I wasn't doing, water guns. I was just thinking about, I would wake up, go to school and get the sports pages and read them front and back. And I was just an oddball kid. And so I think I always felt a little bit on an island. And I had one or two close friends. I had a great high school girlfriend, super bright girl. I think I've always, Ann's bright. I've had like smart women and thoughtful people in my life, but I always thought I was a little odd. Maybe that's why I talk to myself for 3 hours a day. Like that's just who I am.
When was the first time that you took a recorder or you started doing any kind of play-by-play or calling over the, the TV, the radio, whatever it may be? When did that happen?
10, 11, 12 years old. My mom bought
Do you still
me an
have
AM
any
radio.
of those tapes, Colin?
I for a long time, when I moved to Vegas, I was like, moved to Vegas, 82, 86. 1986, I got out of college, and I had a lot of my college tapes. And then I started doing play-by-play, and I wasn't bad. I mean, I was just raw. I was like 20% David Letterman, 25% Bob Costas, 25% Howard Cosell.
You were still trying to find your voice.
Yeah, and then about 32, 33, I kind of felt like, you know what? I think I could work network. I think I could. I think I'm in a local market. I think I'm better than the market. I think I'm better than the next market I was in. And so at about 32, I was like, whatever happens, I think I kind of had this feeling that I could play. It's not like I dreamed of ESPN or Fox, but I just kind of felt like local probably wouldn't be the end game.
So when you were 15 years old and ESPN hit the the network and Sports Center.
Yeah.
Did that blow your mind? Were you just like that? Like you didn't look at that and be like, that's where I need to be?
Well, I watched local TV. I watched ESPN. I liked my local sportscasters more than I liked ESPN. I liked teams. And, you just go a mile deep on stuff. I can remember, it became very much my reputation. If I went over to my friend's house when I was like 17 years old, his parents would be like, oh, do a Keith Jackson impersonation, do Marv Albert. And they just thought that was the funniest thing in the world because I would do impressions. And they were all like, the parents would all be like, yeah, you're really, this is going to be who you are. Like this, I remember going to a wedding when I was like 23 years old and they gave me the recorder and I was interviewing people there. And it was, just like I don't think I'm a ham. I think I'm more introspective, but I think at the time I was a little bit of a ham. And I just kind of knew this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm good at. I didn't love school. I was a good student, but I didn't love it. And I didn't like manual labor, and I didn't want to be a doctor like my dad. And it was like I not only liked sports, I liked the media. I read anything I could get my hands on. I remember my first job out of college, I got a job with the Las Vegas Stars. It was a AAA baseball team, and they gave me 1 inning of play-by-play, and then I had to do group sales and sales. And I remember, this is how competitive I was. In the back office, there you would get media guys from all the Major League Baseball teams and all the minor league baseball teams. And I remember I was 21 years old, 21 and a half years old, and I got the job in Vegas. And I looked at the media guides trying to find out if there was anybody my age doing AAA baseball, which is one step from the bigs. And you know who it was?
Who?
Joe Buck.
Wow.
I'm like, who's this Joe Buck guy that's like, he's like my age doing AAA baseball.
Yeah,
like I was like, who? And then
but he's part of the lucky you-know-what club, Colin. I mean, like,
well,
he's also
great. Yeah, he's also
but
great.
They call it, and I've heard this.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with this phrase, but I've heard it in meetings. The Lucky Sperm Club, right? The guys who have the dads who are, the broadcasters.
And I didn't have any of that. So again, my way was to just outwork people and outfight people.
Well, that's what I think is so fascinating. And so my boyfriend, he used to do local TV as well in Orlando. And you look at how many people want to do this, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. And here's this kid from population 847 in the tiniest in the Pacific Northwest that you could possibly get, 100 miles from Seattle, and goes on to do what you have done. It's absolutely incredible and such a, it's a case study, right? It's like, it's everything.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I got to college, it's interesting. I got to college, Shannon, and I immediately knew, like in high school, obviously, nobody else was going to do what I was going to do. So I wanted to get to college and see who I would compete against in the radio, TV, journalism departments. And I could tell as a freshman, like I was just way more into this. There were 2 or 3 other guys who went on. One of them ended up in wine sales, and another did, I think he's in TV somewhere. I'm not sure what he's doing. But there were 2 or 3 guys into it. But I could just tell I was obsessed. And I loved the process of preparing for games. And I started doing stuff on the local radio station in college, the TV stuff. And there were other kids doing it, but I just knew, I was like, man, they don't want it like I want it. Like they don't care as much as I care. And, then I went to 3.5 years of college, still don't have my degree. I'm like 8 credits shy. And I called up the Major League Baseball team, the Mariners, and talked to their announcer. And I said, what do I do? And he said, go to the baseball winter meetings, take your cassettes, make a business card. So I owned an AMC Pacer. I drove down to San Diego. The baseball commissioner was Peter Uberoth. I took my cards. And there were 400 guys looking for work and about 6 jobs. And I was offered a couple of innings at Midland, Texas. KUFO.
Which by Friday Night Lights, right? That's where Friday Night Lights was.
Yeah.
Midland,
and
Odessa, right?
Las Vegas called me when I got home. I interviewed, so did 75 guys, and I got it. And I called the guy who hired me, Don Logan, probably about 7-8 years ago. I called him out of the blue. And I said, maybe this is just vanity, but I'm like, I just was thinking about my life. And I said, why did you hire me? I remember being in line. There was just guy after guy, and you hired me. And he said, the late Larry Kentop owned the team, and he said, "You walked away," and Larry said, that guy's got a line of bullshit a mile long. He goes, "But I can mold that kid." He goes, "I can make that kid into something really special."
Wow.
And he just said, he goes, "Man, you could just talk. You had confidence." I was like, "You're just making a huge mistake if you don't hire me. I'll work. I will literally not sleep." And I left, and Larry was a very good-looking guy, and he had this, what's those jackets called with the collar up? Buck, and I forget, they're like golfers wear them. He just looked like he had money, right? He looked like he had a beautiful watch, and he just said, "Yeah, I can make that kid into something." I said, his energy is ridiculous. I don't know what's going on with him, but his energy is ridiculous. And I think that just sums up me. I was a little obnoxious, but I was so insanely willful and willing to be coached. Like, point me in a direction, let's go. So, I think about that at the Volume when I'm hiring people. I think about that all the time. Volume now has, 75 employees, and I think about it all the time. Like, passion goes a long way. Obsession goes a long way. How badly do you want it? And I was just reading the other day, Charlie Sheen thought he was going to get on 4th of July, born on 4th of July, but Tom Cruise got it, and Oliver Stone was the director who hired him. And Charlie Sheen asked him, why did you hire Tom Cruise over me? And he said Tom Cruise was just obsessed. I thought Tom wanted it more. Tom was more passionate. And I read that and I thought, boy, isn't that what I look for at the Volume? Like, how badly do you want the job? I don't care where you went to college. I really don't. I don't even look at resumes. Somebody recommends you, I sit down with 3 people and go, yeah, that girl, she's a rock star. I don't know what exactly she's going to be a rock star at, but we can, she's 28, but she's going to succeed. And it really comes down to that.
How many times do you see athletes, Colin? You see it all the time, right? Maybe a little undersized, didn't play with all the big dogs, but man, plays with heart and plays with fire, and they will kick someone's tail out there on whatever field or area of play. I see it all the time. And you're like, that's the guy I want on my team. Like
half
he might...
the NFL is undrafted. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, it's not. Because how bad do you want it? Adam Thielen is a great example, right? And I've used him a lot. Tyler Ulis, when he was at Kentucky, when I was covering Kentucky, small little point guard against all these like monsters, and just went out there and was just this example of heart and want it and want it and want it. And so, yeah, I believe it. When did you when did you start to shift from, because it sounds like you were very performative, like you were doing the impersonations for a long time. Yeah. When did you shift from performative to opinionated? Like, when did you start to find your voice, Colin?
Well, I was always really opinionated. So I started in play-by-play, in anchoring, but I used to do something when I did sports called In Colin's Court. It was like a twice-a-week opinion piece. So I could do highlights, but I was really an opinion guy, and I knew it even when I did play-by-play when I was 22, 23, I was always sprinkling in opinions because I grew up with Howard Cosell. And, Howard Cosell. And he was this sort of bombastic, obnoxious, very smart lawyer that became a sportscaster. So I was always sort of drawn to people that I didn't even know what the word meant at the time, that contextualized sports, that gave you perspective. I was never somebody that... Like, I read The Columnist, not the game story. I always wanted when I was a kid, I always went right to The Columnist. I didn't go to the game story. So I've always been drawn to people with a strong point of view.
How long did it take you to really trust that opinion, or did you always trust it?
I always trusted it because I read a lot. I was into the data. Even now, I love the process of building the show as much as the show. Sometimes days I like the process more than the show. So I always trusted my opinions because I didn't just spitball. Even now I've got a staff and we're writing notes and notes and notes. My whole theory on broadcasting is you have to take the audience somewhere. Sometimes I'll listen to talk radio hosts and they're just kind of making it up as they go. And my take is, you got to respect the audience. And when somebody turns me on and I get 11 minutes until the commercial, I've got to make them laugh, make them think, make them mad, make them something. You have to take people somewhere. Tell a short story. Give them a metaphor or an analogy they can relate to. Think about their wife's in the car and she may not like sports. So you love sports, or you do, and your husband doesn't like sports. How do I keep both of you interested? Well, you do that not by being right. I mean, if you walk to a bar and you sat next to a guy and he was right for 10 minutes, you'd think he was obnoxious and walk away. But if he had an eye patch and was just fascinating, you'd stay there all night. It doesn't matter if you didn't even know if he was embellishing, but he told fascinating stories. Interesting always wins in talk. It's not about being right. I'd like to be right, but nobody is. And I tell young broadcasters this: you want to be right all the time, but nobody is, so get over it. What you have to be is engaging and interesting. If you walked up to a bar and somebody was right for 10 minutes, you'd be like, nice meeting you, and you'd move on. But interesting people, you stick with them all night. Like, where did you get that? Where did you hear that? What's that theory about? And I think sportscasters who play it safe, they don't have predictions or strong opinions, or they're just telling you what already happened. The audience wants projection and conjecture and predictions and theories and a belief system. Nobody's ever turned me off because I was wrong. They've turned me off when I'm boring.
Based on my own experience in life, and you see that in somebody at some point, and it turns on a light bulb inside your brain where you go, that's it right there. Who was that person? When did you see that for the first time in someone and say to yourself, that this is it right here? Was there somebody?
Well, I think I remember watching Muhammad Ali when I was a kid. And he would have been so good today as an athlete. He was doing rhymes and he was doing poetry and rhymes. And I just remember thinking, he was good looking and he was funny and he would jab the media. And I just remember thinking as a kid, I couldn't tell if he was the boxer or the sportscaster. And I just remember thinking, most of the people I was drawn to were entertaining people. I would read the newspaper, but even newspaper people, the funnier the columnist, the more clever the columnist, the more I was drawn to it. So I just know what I was drawn to, and it was always colorful, outspoken, funny people. So you start, that they have an influence on you. You're like, I kind of like that style. As you're building a style, I like an opinion. I always had opinions, but I like telling stories. I like making people laugh. At one point, I thought I would do stand-up comedy, and I'm just not, that's a different skill. But I liked making people laugh. My idols are like Oprah and Johnny Carson. Bob Costas was one of them. But a lot of my idols are not necessarily sportscasters. Johnny Carson, the great gift where he could take the potato chip lady, and it was as funny as Don Rickles. Johnny Carson had an ability to make everybody funny, and he knew when he had a celebrity. He knew when he had somebody from Indiana who had a funny story. His ability to play to the guest. And Johnny Carson's a great example. He was just made everybody interesting. I was a huge Carson fan. My mom bought me when he died that $500 cassette tape library of all his stuff. That's the kind of stuff. And then I kind of got into
sit and
Letterman.
Listen to it.
Oh my God, hours and hours of his timing and his method. I would watch the way he set people up. And I was just because I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster. So I watched Letterman and I watched Carson and I was watching all these other performers. And it was so I would take little bits from them, not necessarily other sportscasters.
Tell me, I also read your mother gave you a tape recorder when you were very young.
Yeah.
Was that was your first tape recorder ever? How old were you? What was it Christmas? Tell me about little Colin opening this tape recorder and realizing that everything that he wants is right here in this tiny little box.
Yeah, no, my mom got me a radio, got me a tape recorder. She knew I loved it. And, again, I'm rural. I was probably, she's probably trying to get me out of her hair. And I took it to a Seattle Mariner game. I took it to a couple of Seahawks games, a Washington Husky game.
When you were a kid,
when I was little. 12, 13,
God,
14,
you had the 10,000
15.
hours. Malcolm Gladwell could do a whole
That's
book
right.
on you. You were done. By the time you were in high school, you had 10,000 hours.
No, I mean, I can remember doing my first baseball game at Eastern Washington University, and I'm 18 years old. I just got out of high school, and I'm probably 19 by the time that I did my first game, and I was ready to go. I wasn't very good, but I was ready to go. I could fill space. I didn't need a color analyst. I just needed a microphone. I didn't need anybody next to me. Just I'll talk about the game because Larry King, years and years ago, when I first got a job at ESPN, I'd been on the air about 6 months, and Larry King was at ESPN. And I got a call from John Walsh, who was kind of the Svengali, retired now, and he said, hey, Larry King wants to meet you. So I go up to the executive floor, like the 5th floor, and here comes Larry King down the hall. And he's like, he'd been a huge listener for years, which was just made my day. He's like, I listen to you every single morning on the radio in LA. And he said, he goes, God, the way you see the world, like, were you dropped on your head or something as a kid? Like, your stuff is weird. And I said, what? He goes, how do you talk to yourself for hours, 3 hours a day? And I said, Larry, you should hear the other 14. I said, I talk to myself jogging and working out. I'm in the car. In fact, Shannon, when I'm driving now in the car, there are times I put headphones in because if somebody looks over, I want them to think I'm talking to somebody and not talking to myself. I'm now
so
62.
great.
I still do it.
So
I put
great.
them in because I got to cycle through something, or I've got a rant and I want to work it out loud, and I don't want people staring at me at a stoplight.
Well, and that was when I told you when you came into that college seminar, the college football seminar at ESPN and spoke, like I was so fascinated by you talked about your process and how it sounds so organic and it's just off the cuff or whatever. But like you really made a point to say like, I've worked all this stuff through. Like I know what I want to talk about. Like and that to me, like the amount of work that you put in where you just make it look easy, right? Like, but I was blown away. I was blown away by that example.
The late, great Robin Williams made it look like he was ad-libbing, right? He wasn't ad-libbing. He knew where he was going. Now, obviously, there's your energy and your juice, and you feed off the crowd. And there are times I'm doing the show, and I think a line comes out funny, and so I double down on it, or Jason McIntyre says something. But by and large, I know where I'm going every segment. And that's okay. You say, well, that's predictable. Well, the audience doesn't know where I'm going. I know where I'm going. Because again, I think you have to take people places.
Yeah, I learned that one of my first jobs in TV. I was in New York, and Bryant Gumbel. I was working at the early show, and Bryant Gumbel was the host with Jane Clayson, and I would write the promos. So coming up on the early show, blah blah blah. He would come in every morning, and he would go through the scripts, and he would blackline them and change them. And you're talking about he's getting in at 4:45 to do promos, right? This is the guy who could probably just get up there and ad lib it. And I learned like, hey, no one is big. No one, he wasn't bigger than the moment. He wasn't bigger than the job. He was putting in the time. And that's where I sort of started to learn that from. Did you see someone do that, or have you always been just a workaholic and just a
Well, I think, again,
grinder?
fear-based. I think a grinder, fear-based, don't want to be embarrassed. Vin Scully always said that. It's not about, you just don't want to be caught on a mic with nothing to say. And when you do a solo show, it happens maybe once a year. Maybe I'm talking and I'm like, oh, I got 5 minutes to burn here. And I'm like, I'll look at a note or something and think, I'm just going to tell a story. But it doesn't happen very often. But, that's the fear for all broadcasters, including me, which is not the empty page, but the empty page or a guest cancels and I'm not prepared. I don't have a note or two. So I always have one or two little side notes to this day that I don't use, but just in case things go sideways, even the ad libs to some degree, you got to be prepared for stuff.
Have you ever been told this might not be it? I mean, obviously in your brain, you know exactly what you want and you know the path that you're on. You've been doing this since you were a child. But did you ever get to a point in your career where you thought maybe it wasn't the path that was going to lay out for you?
Just a lot of chapters. I have a really good staff right now, which makes it a really fun experience. A lot of funny guys on the staff. I'm very lucky. Fox and iHeart allow me to own the volume, right? I couldn't have done that at ESPN. They weren't going to allow that at the time I was there. So I've got wine stores and a company with my wife and the volume and my radio and TV show and, healthy relationships with my kids. And so I've got a lot of balls in the air. So my show doesn't dominate my thoughts and doesn't dominate my life. I take it very seriously. But when my show's over, Shannon, it's over. I don't think about it. I don't rehash it. I move on to other stuff. I came home today thinking about this. I have to make a call when we're done here with a couple of people in Seattle. Refinancing a home, interest rates down, by the way, not that you care.
I
So
do.
I am always just,
But that's new, Colin, right? That's new, Colin.
That's new, Colin.
Being
Yeah,
able to
the
put
show
being able to
doesn't
put it to bed.
dominate. That's right. I can put the show to bed the second I'm off it. And that's just living in the moment. That's a lot of therapy. Like, oh, it's a show, it's a win. Don't microanalyze. You did the best you can. You kicked ass. Boom. Let's move on with your day. It's not fair to my wife. It's not fair to my kids if I'm taking work home with me. Do the best you can. That's what the great thing about prep. You know you gave the best performance you could. You didn't ad-lib it. You did the homework. And so I never, ever second guess a show. Like, shows are done, I'm done with the show. It's time to have the second part of my day and focus on my wife and other stuff.
Is there a difference between making people mad and making people angry?
Well,
There's my run towards or run from for you.
Yeah, I
Where
think,
you have to, because I mean, you fire people up, Colin, and that's what that's your thing, because you
think
make people
people-
think, you know?
people come into a show and they want my perspective on the stories of the day, which in the summer are kind of slow. But in football season, there's 2 or 3 stories every day that need to be addressed. And they come in with their often strong opinion. And if I have a different opinion than their opinion, and they know I've done my homework, they know I'm not a dope, people seek confirmation, right, more than information. People are really in life. Conservatives watch Fox News. Liberals watch
That's right.
Rachel Maddow. People seek confirmation and validation, not really information. And so that anger isn't really about me. It's about them. It's about them seeking an opinion they agree with. And when it's not confirmed, people are often angry. It's like somebody once told me, a psychologist, a therapist said, hate mail is fan mail. It's all the same. He said, indifference kills the radio star, not love or hate. That you want emotion. So hate mail is fan mail. And that was somebody that told me that when I was leaving Portland, Oregon. He was a really, really smart guy. We were both people that ran half marathons. And he said that one time, and it really changed my perspective. It was, oh, you're right. So indifference is the enemy, not somebody who's mad at my opinion. That's somebody that I kind of covet that. I'm looking for people, not that I want to be wrong, but I don't get upset if people are angry. They're angry because they care about sports. And that's my consumer.
Well, how can you be wrong when it's your opinion? Right? Like, this is my opinion.
Or my perspective, right?
Yeah. I won't keep you much longer, but I love hearing this place that you're in. You're not living in Los Angeles anymore. You have just like all of these other things going on. And as I was kind of prepping for this, I didn't know about the health scare that you had February 6th, 2022. Yeah. How did that change Colin Cowherd?
Made me so mad. I'm like, I work out every day. Because
you missed the Super Bowl?
No, because I take pride in the fact I work out every day. I eat my vegetables. So I got into a ski accident. I went with my son skiing. And on the way back on the trail, we were done skiing. We had a great father-son day of skiing, Jackson. And my ski caught a piece of ice on this little trail to the hotel. And I hit it, and I did a face plant on the ice, and I could hear it crack. I could hear something break. And I was like, oh. So strangely, I came back, and by the morning I had a big bruise, and I said, I'm going to ski the next day. It was very painful, but I'm like, I'm here with my son. I'm going to get a ski day in. That probably didn't help. So what happened, 2 days later, I could barely move. It hurt. Like when I was doing my show, I was like, I had to prop up, everything hurt. So I started, I couldn't exercise. It hurt. And I was doing a lot of travel at the time.
Jeez.
And all of a sudden I had gone to Utah because Ann and I had bought a place in Park City, and we'd flown back and we went to dinner, and I'm having dinner with Ann, and I literally said, Ann, this is the sharpest pain I've ever had in my life. It's on my right side, not on my left. It's not my heart, but I have to get to a hospital because this is not normal. So I called a friend who was on the board at this hospital, the first guy I thought of, and Mike Zislis, who owns the Shade Hotel in Manhattan Beach. He literally was down there in 3 freaking minutes. We went through, it was a Saturday night, we went through every red light. We got to the hospital in Torrance in about 20 minutes, and it's usually a 45-minute drive. They thought I had COVID. They didn't know what it was. And so they did x-rays. They kept sticking things in my nose. They thought I had COVID. I didn't have COVID.
I remember those.
I had pulmonary embolism, 2 medium-sized blood clots. And it just happened to be on the Saturday night before the Brady Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. But, you know, I went on blood thinners for 3 months.
It was because of the ski accident? Like that did it?
The ski accident, I didn't work out for about 2 months. I was struggling to walk. I was napping a lot because I couldn't do anything. I was drinking a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
I was not hydrating because I was never thirsty because I was never working out. It was the least active time I'd ever been. And just about the time, I was just getting to a point now where I could walk. Because I really messed it up. And when you break a rib, by the way, there's no way to heal it quickly. It doesn't, you can't drink glasses of milk and eat carrots. It doesn't help. So, and then eventually, I got back to a good place. But it was, I can remember there was about 3 minutes when I was in excruciating pain and they didn't know if it was COVID. And I remember thinking, I got to call my kids because they were taking me to the ICU. And I'm like, you'd read all these stories on COVID and you can't see your kids. And I remember having this like 3 minutes of fear. I'm like, I got to call my kids and just say, listen, I'm 99% sure I'm going to be okay, but I'm going to ICU. And then I think I talked myself out of it. I'm like, don't be overly dramatic. Don't be melancholy. You'll be fine. But it was, you know, it made you appreciate things. I would say since then, the biggest change is I never take my health for granted. Not that I did, but I didn't think about it. I just didn't think about health. I was like, I work out, I'm in good shape, I ski, I play tennis. I really think about what I eat. I'm very intentional with my diet, with my water intake, hydration. Not that I was a mess, but I didn't think about it. And now it's like all the time. It's like, oh, I haven't had a third glass of water. Like I've had a second coffee. I don't need a third. Yeah. I mean, it made me more aware of the frailty of life.
Wow. That's a lesson that a lot of people don't get, right? Like the mortality thing. I feel like so many people walk around and don't understand that mortality part of life. They just think they're going to live forever. And I think having that, I think I personally get it. I understand it. I don't know where I got it. Nothing really severely happened to me when I was a kid, but I've always sort of recognized that, which I think makes me a better person because I realize that like, there's no promise, right? Like there's no promise of tomorrow. Like this could be the last, and you got to make that moment and every moment count.
You know, it's funny if I don't know how old you are. I won't ask, but I'm now
50.
like 62.
I'm good. I'm 50. I just turned 50. Proud.
You look great.
I'm proud of every single second of my life because someone once said to me, growing old is a privilege. Not everyone gets to do it. And so I am full charge. I am never embarrassed about that number.
One of the things I think about is like, you know, when I have, my kids are funny. They're like, you know, mom has a certain way that she raised them. And I'm like wisdom dad. Like I'm always asking my kids, well, what's your perspective on that? Like I'm serious dad. Like, well, why do you think that is? And I have these really deep conversations, you know, with my kids about like life and stuff. And they always say, you know, they're like, Dad, we'll always remember you from like the stuff you ask us. And like not that I'm imparting some brilliant wisdom, but that's the kind of the discussions we have about life. And what do you think about that? And how does that land for you? And one of the things I've really learned in life, and I don't know where I received this from, but I do feel like it's a message because I'm a really happy guy. I just wake up happy. And I'm not going to be the best looking or the smartest or the richest or the best at this, but I told my mom before she passed, I'm like, Mom, I talked to my mom like 3 or 4 days before she passed. I got very, very lucky. And she said, I hope I've been a good mom. And I said, I am the happiest man I know. I said, I just love everything about my life. So I said, Mom, whatever it is, that's the win. If my kids told me that, God, I love my life, I did my job. And I think one of the things to get happy, I've thought about this a lot. Just once a day, laugh at yourself. Like, oh my God, I am so dumb. I did something the other day. I'm like, oh God, I'm just so embarrassed. It's like you read all these like influencers and these health experts on what helps you live and eat right and socialize. A big part of my relationship with Ann is just laughing.
Totally.
And going, it's just laugh and it's okay and admit you're wrong and don't hold on to stuff. When I started the volume, I said, I only have one rule. It's not about being right. It's about getting it right. I'll never fire anybody for being wrong. But if you keep doing the same thing and have rigidity and you make the same mistakes over and over and over and you're holding on to it, I'll have to get rid of you. Like, don't worry about being right. This is fun. Like building a company is fun. There is no right. I mean, Amazon started as a bookstore online. Like, it doesn't matter. Don't fall in love. I text Mark Cuban when I started the volume. I said, give me some advice. He said, double down on what works and get rid of what doesn't immediately. Don't fall in love with your ideas. Fall in love with what is working. And he goes, you're going to find in 5 years, the company's not going to look anything like the company you envisioned. And I thought it was such great advice. And I've tried to share that with the staff is, guys, let's just work hard, be kind, be good to people, and whatever works, just lean into it and double down. Sometimes I am shocked by how bad my instincts are on a podcast. I'll listen, I'll be like, I don't get it. The audience loves it. And I'm like, all right, I'm wrong. I'm not gonna grapple with the consumer. The consumer wins.
I love that. Laugh at yourself. That is such great advice, Colin. Because like I'll tell you what, I'm a complete knucklehead, and I am constantly laughing at myself because I'm a nerd. I'm a total nerd that can't.
Oh, same here.
Like walk. I fall everywhere. I spill shit on myself. I'm all over the place. I'm a hot mess. Like you should see me sometimes getting up. I travel with the NBA team, and Coach Lee he like literally laughs out loud at me from time to time because I'll run into something or my book bag will be open and everything will, and I'm just like it's just me. So I love that advice. I'm gonna let you go. I do have one more question for you
Sure.
because this is a origin and how we got here. Have you ever thought about what you would want to say to 7-year-old Colin? Or what 7-year-old Colin would think about where 62-year-old Colin is now?
I would tell 7-year-old Colin, hey, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Take a breath, smell the roses. Your childhood's not perfect. It's going to be all right. I had a great moment at the Union Plaza. I'll leave you with this. Shannon, I'd got a job out of college in Las Vegas, and I'd been there about a year. And Don Logan, who hired me, was taking me on a sales call. And it was a big one. So he goes like, you can't go. I'm meeting with the president of the casino. And I was like 23, boogers in my nose or something, idiot. And he goes, stay down here and sit at the bar. And I sat next to a guy from Texas. He looked like the Marlboro Man, open white shirt, Rolex. He was waiting for a cab and he was playing poker machines, and I started talking to him because I talk to everybody to this day. Uber drivers, doesn't matter. I would talk to Waymo and there's nobody driving. I'll talk to anything and anybody. And I started talking to this guy for 10 minutes and he was looking at his watch and his cab was late. And I said, I was asking him about retirement and so on. So he goes, kid, you're 22. He goes, the fact that you asked about retirement at 22 and financial planning, he goes, people often get to 50 before they ask that.
That's right.
And I said, well, he had just sold like a bunch of radio stations in Texas and Arkansas. And I said, like, what is your advice? And he goes, listen, celebrate other people's success, not your own. be happy for other people's payday, success, and happiness. When that happens, the world opens up. He goes, and that's going to take a while, because when you're young, you're kind of, hyper focused on you.
Yes.
But I always remember that. He said, like, just celebrate other people's success. And it was just, it was a 5-minute conversation, but it just landed. And maybe I was kind of impressed with the watch and the look, and he was handsome. But I remember walking out of that and just thinking, it's just those little moments where you meet an idol or somebody you appreciate or somebody smart. And those, like, when anybody comes up to me and on the train in Chicago, a kid did the other day, and at the gym, he came up to me, and I always give him time. Where'd you go to school? Why did you get into that? Where's your first job? What's your favorite team? How come you didn't leave? Like, that 3 minutes meant the world to me when I was 22. And I know that kid who came up to me and said, oh my God, he's shaking. He's like, oh my God, I've been watching you for 10 years and his hand's shaking. Just give him 3 minutes. Just give him a little of your life. Ask a question. Because I know for me, that stuff had profound impact. Just those little nuggets, just to this day, you talked about, they just resonate and stick in your head forever.
Well, you did that for me, Colin, when, 2015 or 14, whenever that was, that we, we were able to spend some time together. And I greatly appreciated that. Have always told people about that time and obviously about the question that you asked me. And it has had a profound impact on who I've become over the last 15 years. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. I know you're incredibly busy, and I'm so happy that you are at peace in Chicago and have all of these things going on and kicking ass. And this is awesome. You answered my question. You wanted it since you were 8. That's how you got here. You worked your ass off, and you didn't have anything else. So Colin Cowherd, thank you for being on Sons and Daughters. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your insight and all of the good stuff that you provide everybody every single day. So appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shannon. Congratulations on all your success.
Thanks. So that was all. I haven't had a chance to talk to Colin like in depth about like that moment at the bar and the question that he asked me. And truly, I mean, it is something that I 1000% think about and share with other people all the time. That was really cool. I'm such a fan. I remember, oh my God, it must have been 07 or 08, driving in my car. I just had started in TV, and, you're still listening to, FM, AM radio, and coming across Colin's show. And I was a fan back then. I mean, I listened to it all the time. There was something about what he said, like his ability to just talk and laugh at himself. And he would laugh at himself on the things that he said, and you would laugh along. When I first got to meet him at ESPN, I was a huge fan. Like, would walk by the radio, booth where he was to kind of watch him doing his thing. I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's incredibly gracious. A good person, man. And sometimes in every business, but certainly in this one, it's, sometimes all of those things don't come wrapped up in one person. So thank you, Colin Cowherd, for being on Sons and Daughters. And thank you. Gosh, I feel smarter from that one. And if you guys didn't take away from something from that, then you need to go back and listen to it, because there were a lot of really incredibly insightful things that we got to learn from him. How about he just casually is like, yeah, I called up Mark Cuban. Like, I just called up, Mark Cuban. What kind of advice? Love it. Okay. We do have some closing thoughts from the family, from the Sons and Daughters family. And this one is from, Life's Not a Spectator Sport. Oh, I'm shocked that I could get that. This is our episode with Leah Pruitt. Really neat to see how hardworking and dedicating your life and energy to so many goals and accomplishments have inspired others to be better than their own realistic beliefs of themselves. Leah is the one so many mothers should showcase to their daughters. Great job to both of you. I loved talking to Leah Pruitt. God, she is so much more than what I thought. Like, just, hey, racer, mom, wife, like, she is, man, she could be running the country. All right, here we got another comment from James Parker on YouTube about Rutledge Wood. My only complaint with this episode was that it was way too short. I agree. Maybe we'll have Rutledge on again. Loved listening to you and Rut. Thank you. I got to work with Rutledge last weekend at Mecum, and so I got to hang out with him. I've known him forever, and we really have a great time together. He's really a great soul. Okay, that's it for today. Make sure you share the episode. Make sure you go back and listen to some of the episodes if you haven't caught them, because they're getting better and better, and the guests are so cool. And make sure that you reach out to Colin and let him know that you heard him on Sons and Daughters. And of course, follow us wherever you want to follow us. We're everywhere. We're Instagram, we're TikTok, we're Facebook. And thank you for listening today. And thank you for being part of the Sons and Daughters family. We'll see you next time. Bye.